Hi, everyone, and welcome to Campground Confidential, a podcast about starting, running, and growing your campground business. I'm Stephanie Puglisi. On each podcast episode, we'll talk to campground owners and other experts in the outdoor hospitality industry. We'll hear stories about what it's really like to own a campground, the good, the bad, and the ugly. From Park Vendor Review, this is Campground Confidential. Hello and welcome to Campground Confidential by Park Vendor Review. My guest today is Rasmussen, CEO and Creative Director of Spacious Campgrounds, a dynamic collection of 15 campgrounds from Maine to Georgia, unified by a cosmic night sky theme. Ali leverages her storytelling prowess and entrepreneurship-focused education to enrich the Spacious Skies brand and foster a corporate culture of collaboration and experimentation. I've been watching the Spacious Skies campground brand over the last couple of years, interested in both their growth trajectory, but also their campground value proposition, which strikes me as unique for some of the reasons that we're going to discuss today. Welcome to Campground Confidential, Ali.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm excited that you agreed to come on in the early days of this show. So we're, just kind of like throwing you out there and you haven't really gotten a chance to listen to too many episodes and you don't really know what's happening, but we're going to get through this and it's going to be great.
I'm familiar with sort of jumping right in. So
yes,
I'm ready for it.
Exactly. And I knew my people that I could get to jump right in based on what I've seen you do in the campground space. So welcome to the show. And we are going to start off with the nitty gritty for our listeners. Now, some people might be more familiar with your brand because they were at the Arvik/Ojai convention this past fall. And they may have seen you up on stage in the panel and kind of introducing your brand to the collective crowd there. But for those folks listening who haven't heard of Spacious Campgrounds yet, tell us where these campgrounds are, how big they are, who's coming to them. Just give us the nitty gritty.
Yes. So Spacious Skies Campgrounds is a collection of 15 campgrounds from Maine to Georgia. We're in 11 states so far. And on average, the number of sites ranges from our smallest is around 60 sites and our largest is around 200 sites. So we're right in that sweet spot. It's, not too big, not too small.
Mm-hmm.
We also all of our properties are really nature focused and really close to the great outdoors feeling that you know and love when you think about camping. So in general, our campgrounds are not they are campgrounds. They are not camping resorts or resorts. So we are really intentional about occupying that space. We are campgrounds. So we have two in Maine. Spacious Skies Balsam Woods is in central Maine, really close to the Dark Sky National Park. Up there, it has a direct trail access to over 1,000 miles of ATV trails. So if you both or individually like the dark sky and sort of like astrotourism or ATVing, that is the campground for you.
That's quite a niche crossover, Ali. I wonder how many of your guests will fit into that unique Venn diagram.
And that's why I say, like, you can like one, or you can like both. And it's a beautiful campground. It's Maine. It's really just what you think of. Our other campground in Maine is Spacious Skies Walnut Grove. It's a little bit inland from the southern coast of Maine, those coastal towns. So you're not in the hustle and bustle of like Old Orchard Beach. It's a little bit, more private. It is pretty close off 95, so it's easy to get to. And that's one of our more like chill environments. It's also campground number one. So that is how we got, our Spacious Skies foot into the door. And I actually worked that campground myself for the first 2 weeks of campground ownership by not intentionally, I'll say that, but it was a great learning experience.
So it's probably the campground that you feel most fondly for and also most triggered by then.
Exactly. Right. I think that, most of your listeners are likely, campground operators, but can you imagine operating a campground without advance notice? Because
Right.
that's what happened to me on day one. But absolutely.
Sets you up
Um,
well for the industry, I
that's
think. So
right.
that was your first one. And where's your most recent one?
Our most recent one is in Savannah. So, Spacious Skies Savannah Oaks is one of our largest turnarounds. So, we are renovating the property as we speak. It's still just screaming demand because Savannah is just crazy right now. People are, they are staying no matter if we are repaving or not. But
Hmm.
it is a beautiful campground. The Spanish moss on the oaks is it is your backdrop. We are right on the canal, so we have a dock, and you can launch your boat right off of it, and if you go out far enough, you'll get to the Atlantic. So that is, yeah, we acquired that campground in April, and yeah, everything in between
And hit the
is,
ground running. Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
So you mentioned in that introduction to Campground, I said in my introduction to bringing you on the show that I had been watching Spacious Skies Campgrounds for a particular reason, right? Like as a brand, we didn't know each other. We hadn't met.
Right.
And the brand was very interesting to me. And you mentioned a couple of reasons why in your description. First of all, in this, if we look at our trends data, it's been an arms race in the resort space, right? And most people, if you ask them, most campers, most RVers, if you ask them what's going on in the campground world, they're going to be like, campgrounds are getting bigger and crazier and more expensive and more amenities, and I don't even recognize. Right. Like you
Right.
get the old man shakes fist at
Oh,
cloud kind of
oh,
response a lot, right? Like this,
right.
this isn't even camping anymore. And there's a lot of different ways you can respond to that. Um, but it's interesting to me that all of a sudden I'm noticing there's these campgrounds and there's this new company and I never heard of them before. And they seem to be very methodically,
Mm.
or creating or buying and opening and branding these campgrounds that are the exact kind of campground that everybody says doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was very interesting to me. And it turns out you meant to do that, huh?
It was intentional from the start. Eric and I started Spacious Skies after a summer of 2020, so heart of the pandemic. After getting into the lifestyle ourselves with our very young children at the time, our youngest was 8 months old and our oldest was 5. We bought a pandemic camper. We 2 days later we hit the road with zero reservations made anywhere. We just were winging it night after
Wow.
night after night. I don't know what that says about us. It wasn't even like a discussion, it was just what we were suddenly doing. But every night for, I think it was a collective 30 or so nights that first camping season, we stayed almost at just many as many campgrounds. And we it was sort of unintentional market research. We stayed at every type of campground out there, mom and pop, state park, national park, large, REIT owned corporate
Mhm.
resorts, other, sort of like name brand campgrounds and franchise campgrounds. And it just was sort of clear to us one night, literally sitting around a campfire looking up at our spacious skies.
Spacious guys.
That's
Go ahead.
right. And it was like why don't we put our own spin on this? Our family has benefited so greatly from this pastime, and we are, we wanted to sort of touch as many lives as possible in that same way. And the way that we like to camp is the experience that we are creating across the board. We like this, focus on being outside and being camping, but we like the amenities and the creature comforts
Right.
that like a private campground will bring. We don't need like a huge activity schedule, but like a nice set of, like, some planned offerings is great. So that's how we design our activities and like events
Right.
offerings. We don't need a full scale restaurant, but like a snack bar is nice to encounter every now and so like that's what we design. So it's really just like our preferences.
It
um
almost feels
Times
like a
15.
Goldilocks principle is at work here in your thinking about it, right? Like
Yes.
you were at the state parks, maybe some of the county parks, some of the more national parks that are very rustic
Right.
and, no hookups. And then, you know, it sounds like you did visit some of the larger resort kinds of
Right.
things with the big water, even the
Yes.
wibbits out on the water
The
and the
Whippets,
water slide,
yes.
the wibbits, right?
Oh, yeah.
And, my husband and I, we camp every which way. We don't
Yeah.
say we don't like anything, but it sounds like you were like, but there's a just right for
There
us.
is a
And
just right, and we think, I mean, it's not even think, we know because we see it in the data that that sweet spot is the sweet spot
Mhm.
for the most people in the camping customer base. We maintain an affordable rate per night. We have, I think 80% of our collection is RV or tent site, but we also have lodging. So if you are not ready to stay in a tent or an RV, or you just want to have that experience, we have that too. We have a few, sort of like glamping type offerings. I mean, in lodging, structure alone, because
Mhm.
we are not glamp grounds, and however you can define that, which is
Right.
a million ways. But we do want to occupy like that sweet spot for the most people.
So I'm gonna jump you ahead and then we'll go back to the beginning even before because
Yeah.
as much as this is sort of maybe the origin of the thought, all the things that led you and Eric to getting to that place
Yes.
obviously are important too. But
Yes.
so from that moment, looking up at those spacious skies to the
Mhm.
opening of the first
Yeah.
Spacious Skies campground, how long of a period of time was
Oh,
that?
that's a great question. It was like 9 or 10 months. So it
You
was,
all get it done.
we
That's nuts.
well, I mean, I think this goes exactly to, where Eric and I come from before Spacious Skies. So it just so happens our skill set really lends itself to collaboration to create something like Spacious Skies Campgrounds. Eric's background is in real estate development. So he was in self-storage before
Oh, okay.
campgrounds, and that is not the first time you're going to see that transition in the space.
Right.
There are a lot of people, a lot of investors, and sort of like groups like that are coming out of self-storage or diversifying their portfolio, their real estate portfolio.
Well, stop right
So
there. Let me dig into
yeah.
that a little bit. There's a my understanding is that part of the reason for that correlation is it's a similar type of business modeling, right? Where you're looking at a certain amount of square footage and you're calculating
Yes.
your margins from that square, like all those little pieces of square footage. Now,
Yes.
that is, I'm layman, always admitting that. But
Yeah.
am I right in that understanding of that business modeling being very aligned?
Yes,
Okay.
and what we have discovered is that there is so much more to campgrounds as an investment because of the operations piece.
Right.
And you can't just, it's not selling little boxes,
Right.
empty boxes, but people think it is.
So
People
it's
think it
close
is.
enough. It's close enough to get folks like you interested and on that path, and
That's
then
right.
you get the surprise.
Then you get the surprise, and
Okay.
some people make it and some people don't, which is, I
Right.
guess, with anything.
Right.
But that's the surprise that you
Okay.
encounter, is that it's not just a simple real estate investment that is gonna, cash flow right off the bat. You Operations with campgrounds and with outdoor hospitality is a whole different beast from other forms of hospitality anyway. Like, it is
Right.
so much more intensive and personal, and that's, we can go down that rabbit hole all day.
Right.
But our understanding of that for sure has contributed to us being able to grow the way that we have. And Eric, in particular, his skill set in development beforehand is what allowed us to, like, acquire at the clip that we did. Like, he
Right.
just knows how to transact in a real estate environment very well. And then, my background is in marketing and in sort of just general creativity. I was a voice major in undergrad and thought
I
I was going to
saw
be an
that
opera
and I
singer.
thought, is she going to sing for us on the
It
podcast?
wouldn't be the first time. I think that I got some free advertising out of it once when I sang for somebody from like RV Life, but I won't today. Mm. So I'm a general creative. I went to school for music. I switched courses at some point. I was working in the back end of, or behind the scenes in the music industry, and then I realized I needed an education that wasn't like it was like I went to Hogwarts. That's a music degree in my head. So I went to business school. That's where Eric and I met. We were both on this like sort of entrepreneurial track and knew that we would do something together. We had a bunch of ideas, along the way. Nothing ever really stuck until Spacious Skies. So that summer where the idea was born, that was when Eric started, working on finding brokers and, relationship building in that way. And then together we were uh, business planning, trying to figure out like who our customer would be, like what our mission values were, what the marketing plan was. I mean, that's my side of things, and so that's where we started was with marketing and branding and
Right.
acquisitions. And I think that we acquired Walnut Grove the week before Memorial Day 2021. We had intended to hire a third party management company. That's what a lot of people do who
Right.
are, jumping into the space in this way and intending to like have a
Scale
portfolio.
and grow. Right.
Exactly. But and I think that where that side of the industry is today is really different in even just that short period of time. But because of like the explosive growth
Hmm.
of the space during those years, that's similar to like what was happening in the third party management
Right.
scene. I think that they were growing too fast as
Too
well.
fast. Right. They were
And
taking on jobs that they couldn't necessarily follow through on or
that's
deliver
right.
on. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And of course, I don't blame them for that, but we found ourselves in a really sticky situation where we're at closing day with our sellers of our very first campground. It was the most mom and pop operation of any of the 15 that we came into. Like it
Okay.
was just the two of them,
Pencil
along
and
with
paper, like
oh
writing
yes,
down. Yeah.
oh
Taking
yes.
checks.
That's right, that's right.
Hmm.
Where their seasonal campers were, volunteering, so, like,
Right.
the way that they operated required a staff, but
Right.
it wasn't showing up on any of the financial statements. Long story short, the third-party management company did not staff the campground. There was no staff to work the campground,
Yes, there
and
was. It was you, Allie.
That's right. I l I listen, I thought I was showing up to this closing day for, like, fun. I had intended to go up to Maine, poke around at our competitors for a week, like, leave Eric and the kids in New Jersey,
Yeah.
just be there to shake hands with the sellers and sort of hand it off, meet the team, meet the staff. That did not materialized, did not show up. And I think that this is like the root of why we've had success. Like it was instantaneous where I realized what was happening and I knew that we had to save face in like the world's biggest way because we had ambitions. We had four other campgrounds under contract.
Right.
Like we already
You
had
were all in on this
we
idea.
were
Like, yeah.
all in
Mhm.
every bit of everything that we had 13, friends and family investing in this first campground. I mean, like it was there was no failure is not an option.
Right.
So I acted like this was all going according to plan. I am here for you to train me on your campground, on your life's work, because it's a really emotional thing to sell a campground.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to feel like they were, handing it over to good hands, and I think that they have now. But
Yeah.
so I was, working the front desk and meeting the guests and greeting them and serving them. And I was out on the grounds. I was performing maintenance. I was running the honey wagon because that campground had to be
And
slowed
you probably like,
down.
now I know what a honey wagon is.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's something that I didn't have in my brain
Yes.
before, and now I do. And now I really do.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had to call Eric that day, say I'm not coming home. I don't know when I will. That was eye opening. But I will say that there was shockingly no point during that time where we were regretful, where we, were didn't think this was a good
You didn't
idea.
have a moment where you went like where your stomach just sank and you thought, what did we get ourselves into?
No, not that particular sentiment. There was, like, for sure some tears and crazy stress and no sleeping. And, I mean, I was running a 100 site campground by myself. Eric was home raising 3 kids and trying to figure out how to get his wife home, like, by himself. So there was definitely stress.
Yeah.
But it also came with just, like, so this like, super valuable learning experience that we have carried through
Mhm.
running every single Spacious Skies campground. It we see ourselves, and to, end that part of the story, it ended up being 2 weeks that I stayed up there, and then the management company sent somebody to work the campground. It was acceptable enough. I knew that, like, I had to leave. I could not
Right,
stay
right.
there. I
You
needed
had
to.
3 littles. I mean,
Yes,
they're
yeah.
little.
They were little.
Little, little.
Yeah, and yeah, but in that 2-week time frame, I think I just mentioned that, like, we had 13, we hoofed it to raise the money to buy this little tiny
Yeah.
campground. In that same 2-week time frame that I was up in Maine, Eric, like, by fate, secured our first, like, real capital backer so that we didn't
Okay.
have to hoof it for the rest of them. And actually, he got a phone call. Somebody was calling to ask for a reference for some guy that used to work for Eric, and after that hour-long phone call, we had our first capital partner. So that
So that
was
released a lot of the pressure
that's right.
for
That's right.
those next transactions. That's so it's sort of the path wasn't clear and it suddenly became
Exactly.
clear,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Like, that takes out a lot of noise and a lot of effort. And we could really just plug forward. And we that summer we purchased French Pond in New Hampshire, Woodland Hills in New York, Minuteman in outside of Boston, Seven Maples, New Hampshire, Country Oaks, New Jersey, Shenandoah Views, Virginia. I think that's what that closed out that year. So it was a really big year. And we, after that first campground, with that negative experience with third party management, we knew right away that we had to run the campgrounds ourselves. So business plan number 1 failed. Business
Right.
plan number 2 was in full reaction mode. We did not have the business plan written out for operations, like, for an operating platform. So we nabbed somebody who was willing to be our director of operations and to build out the foundation of the platform, to hire all the first GMs, to set up the accounting system, to set up the payroll system. We had our an analyst who is now our director of finance, but, like, he was under Eric. So it was like a team of 4 that started to grow and grow.
Mhm.
And after that first one, which is now under Spacious Skies management, now everybody is a Spacious Skies employee. Everyone who works on the campgrounds works for Spacious Skies. And so that has lent itself to the development of the brand, for sure.
Right. So I want to let's dig into that a little more. I'm going to jump ahead to that masterclass that we ask everybody to kind of come on ready to teach, our other campground owners and operators that are listening something really valuable that they're really great at. Your story just highlighted I think what you're going to talk to us a little bit
Yeah.
about, because, most people don't have that type of experience where they come into the campground space and they think, I know who my customer is going to be. I know what the campground, like the positioning of the campground, the value proposition, all that. It's the opposite, and then figure out what a honey wagon is, right? It's actually the flip side. It's a
Yes.
reverse. So,
Yes.
from my experience talking to campground owners over the last decade, the majority of them have campground operations knowledge
Yes.
in some way or another, whether it was in another space and they're like, oh, well, we're handy and we have that trades background. A lot of
Right.
people come from a trades background or whatever. And they have that operations knowledge. They may have the camping knowledge, the RVing knowledge, all of that stuff. And
Mhm.
then what happens is they open up a campground and they're like, now how do I market this? Right. Like if
Yep.
the people don't just come on their own. And then
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, I know how to run a campground, but I don't know how to do Google ads. And I don't know how
Mhm.
to do social media. And I don't know how to do
Right.
promotions or whatever. Uh, you're kind of the flip of that. You came
Mhm.
in with that marketing, head and an idea of this brand, and then you had to figure out the operations. So
That's
you're
right.
such a knowledgeable person about how to lead with brand, and I think you've come through on that, right? Like I did not know you, and I knew what the Spacious Skies brand was. Like, how did you manage that, right? You got in front of me very early on, just me keeping tabs on things. You got your name out there. And then I knew somehow what you were up to without ever
Yes.
having a conversation.
Right.
So that tells me that you knew exactly what you wanted to be and you managed to get your message out there to the consumer.
Yes.
So, like, to the people listening that do struggle with that, like, just give some of your most helpful, actionable tips, like where to start, right? Everybody knows how to write a business plan, right? How do you start creating a brand?
It starts with what I like refer to as my manifesto. It starts with like a free write almost, and it is this document now that I have that I think everybody should have that outlines like what you stand for, who you dream your customer to be. It's not just out of your head. It should like include research and knowing like who the demographics are of the people within a 2-hour radius of your campground. It should reflect things that you can like make happen and things that you can well, for lack of a better term, like afford. Like if your brand, like if you can't afford to overly amenitize your property and like put in a Whibbit or put in a giant water slide or put in like, then your brand should be more of like things that you can offer. Like in our case, it's these intangibles. So from the get go, this manifesto includes service as being a part of like the brand, customer service, and this like personal feel to it. It has manifested itself into, pleasing visuals for sure. Like if you look at logos across the board, um, for sure like a brand is going to like lean heavily on the visual representation of it, and so we made sure that our visuals were pleasing, were simple, not too just like complicated, that represented what the product is. It's like a camping themed
Right.
logo.
So if you go to spaciousguyscampgrounds.com, you're going to see all the stuff that Allie's talking about right now. And you're going to see dark colors, right? Like
Yes.
I've noticed that, right?
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this and not watching this on YouTube, you don't know that Allie's wearing a shirt with stars on.
Always
Which,
representing the
right,
brand.
you're representing your brand. Yeah.
That's
Which I
right.
knew the second our cameras turned on. And I was like, yeah, she's really got
Yeah.
this dialed in.
Yes. And I'm glad that you pointed that out because we are using like the night sky and like the evening time in our visual representations because that is so far sort of a differentiation from the other brands in the space that focus on like the daytime elements of camping and daytime activity. And it can, like, differentiation can be as simple as that. Like, what do you do differently, or like how can you position yourself that's like slightly different than your competitors, and how can you say that, like, they do this way and we do it this way. So pinpointing what that is a big part of developing your brand and leaning into that. And just back to sort of like the visual elements and what that can translate into. We try to make camping at a Spacious Skies campgrounds, or like envisioning camping at a Spacious Skies campground seem more exciting before people got there, by really highlighting things like our branded merchandise, for example. So like
Hmm.
we everybody knows that in your camp store, if you are selling branded goods, like that is a physical, tangible, collectible memento for your campers to take with them, and say, oh, I remember like my experience here. And so we were very intentional about not just like creating those items, but like showcasing them on social media, of course, and like on our website, and like making sure that that visual or that collectible was something that, like, oh well, if I go camping there, I can get that. And that was something that is physical, tangible, version of like what the brand represents. And every one of our campgrounds has its own unique icon that fits into the greater Spacious Skies logo. And I would invite everyone to please visit our website and sort of see what I mean.
Hmm.
The logo of the brand of the company has different like segments in it, and one of the middle segments changes out for each campground, and it represents, like, very simplistically, something that is unique about that campground and about that campground story.
So it might be the
So
Spanish moss
that's right.
or something
Hmm.
like that, right?
Exactly, Spanish moss or a moose. I'm
Hmm.
sure you can guess which state that's from.
Yeah. What do we
And
have? I haven't seen the one from Dorothy, New Jersey. We're Jersey girls here on this podcast.
yes,
I have to
exactly.
see that one. I have to notice.
Well, that one's an acorn because of the
Okay.
country oaks,
Yep.
the oak
Okay.
trees
All
that
right.
are there. And yeah, so they are, and we try to make them like nature themed. So it's either gonna
Hmm.
be an animal or a plant. So it's not, too crazy. But I think that, just really like leaning into the like top 3 things that you can say, like, my brand is this, and this. It's clarity
Right.
of your message. And
And
so
simplicity, right? Like
that's
three
right.
is three, you should be able to say three things,
That's
right?
right.
And keep it
Mhm.
simple. And you have those three and they're clear. And then you can stack a bunch of things under that, right?
That's right.
Like your pins or your merch
That's right.
or, things
Yes.
like that go along with that. And you can iterate on that. It doesn't all have to happen in one day, right?
Right.
That you develop all those things, but those three things
Right.
stay the same.
Exactly. And I will say that, like, if you don't have a marketing, background or degree or anything, like, it go with what you know. And like we do that too. Like our brand includes things that are from our personal life, because it's what we know. I mean, not only is like our product what we like in
Hmm.
camping and like what we enjoy as a camping family, but we put little you have a dog, make your dog a part of your visuals. Like our dogs are some of our logos for
Right.
our our loyalty program and our chat bot. um you know our kids grace our photos, and because they're easy models and they're literally actively camping and doing the things that you want people to see in your materials, and so that they can envision their families camping there. So it's like, and the night sky themed as well. I mean, that is a differentiator in the way that I was saying, describing before. But like before, I wanted to be an opera singer. I wanted to be an astronaut, And so like this is so like satisfying to
Yeah.
me. This is like a personal passion is astronomy. So it's like go with
Well,
what you know and like.
it's very on trend, and you did it before a lot of that data started to come out, where night skies started to really gain a lot of steam in the
Yes.
campground space.
Right.
Um, I think, yes, you probably had some of your, like, you probably felt that and had your pulse on that a little bit, but at the same time, there's probably a little bit of kismet here, right? That, like, now
Yes, for
we're
sure.
going into this year where the solar eclipse is the
Yes.
biggest booking item,
Right.
right?
Right.
And you
Right.
happen
Yeah.
to have this, like, celestial branding on your
Yes.
campground,
Yes, it is that is a little bit of fate for
Yeah.
sure. But yes, yes, I think that, keeping your pulse on what is a trend, I mean, it's sort of, like, easier said than done
Yeah.
too, right? Because what
You're
especially
not gonna be you can't be chasing trends
no,
with your
no.
business model and with your
Right.
marketing, but what you with your manifesto, right? But what you
Yes.
can do is you can chase those trends with very lightweight kinds of actions, right? Where
Yes.
you're now marketing in your social, right?
Right.
You got no
Right.
skin in it. What you can pivot in your social very easily, right? And
Exactly.
you're going, oh, people are really interested in experiences right now. So then
Right.
highlight the experiences around your campground, right? Like, so you don't want to
Exactly.
chase trends with your actual wallet, I
No,
think.
that's exactly what I yes, and exactly what I was touching on before. You do not wanna chase anything that is, like, outside of your bounds.
Right.
But yeah, exactly as you said, there are things that are free-ish, and you should for sure, like, be keeping up on what people are responding to and reacting to
Yeah.
in
Another
the
example in your campgrounds, I heard you mention earlier, you were mentioning the accommodations, right, that were on site, and I was thinking of that trend of, multi-generational camping. So you had said, "Oh, people
yeah,
can stay there if they don't really know." Well, a lot of the time, it's people that wanna go camping with
right.
people they know, with campers
Yes,
or whatever, and they don't have their own yet, and so you say,
right,
"Oh, come along." I mean, we camp with people all the time. We're in our RV, and we say, "Hey, just rent a cabin."
right, right,
And they do it so that, and or grandparents who may
right.
not have, and they can come along. So that multi-generational trend, like knowing how you can lean into that with your accommodations and say, bring, Nan and Pop along. And that's
Exactly.
an easy marketing tactic without, you're not spending any money, right? You're
That's
not
right.
chasing the trend. You're just being aware that this is something that people are interested in.
That's exactly right. And, our uh, the manifesto to bring that up again, I mean, that has always included this really broad stroke view of our customer base. We intended to be something that was attractive to multiple generations, to the new camper, to the experienced camper, to everybody on like sort of every spectrum, political or religious or otherwise, like something that is. But there are, I think, certain geographies or certain markets where you should be more targeted than that.
Right.
And so like knowing that if you're in Florida, you're probably not going to want to, like invest in things that children
Right.
really
Right.
love.
Hmm.
And knowing that you are playing up to your mature audience.
Right. Right. So tweaking your model, your inclusion model
Exactly.
based based on
Yeah,
who needs to be included
that's right.
in
That's right.
in the various spaces.
Exactly. Exactly.
I
Yeah.
love it. All right. Well, that
Yeah.
was super helpful, Allie. Thank you so much. Now, I want to, before we go dive into our lightning round, are you ready to answer some questions?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. All right. So here we go. Um, what was the biggest mistake you made as a brand new campground owner?
I think that the biggest mistake we made, oh gosh, was raising rates too quickly when we came in a few instances. That is, I would never recommend really adjusting rates crazily, even if you think that your area competitors are getting, more than what the campground that you're coming into is getting. that was a big mistake in a few locations, and we are course correcting. We've had to course correct for that. So
Right.
um,
Maybe not understanding campers, right? It's like
that's
that
right.
difference of campers from other kinds of hospitality areas. Yeah.
That's right.
You
That's
guys were
right.
quick learners. All right. What is your absolute favorite thing about being a campground owner now?
It is hands down being able to like be in the memories of all of the campers that come through our doors. I think that we hosted, gosh, like 80 or 90,000 campers this year. So I just the stat was just coming up for us, but we've hosted a ton of campers is really my point, and that is spectacular. And that is what drives our whole entire team, is knowing that we are like giving these lifetime memories to everybody that comes camping with us.
Yeah, it's a special industry to be in that way. All
Yeah.
right, but what is your your least favorite thing about owning campgrounds?
I gosh, I
You
think
can't say nothing.
I know I can't say nothing. I think my like it's realizing that something like an idea that I want to work will not work
Mhm.
at a particular location, like whether that is like a marketing strategy or like a new type of service or amenity. I'm trying to think of like a more concrete example, but just like having to about face
Mhm.
is jarring, and especially if it goes against what I
Your
personally like
vision. You're
and
not in
goes
charge of
against the
everything. Is that
vision.
your answer is I'm not in charge of everything?
It is like whatever disturbs my control freak.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, I see you on that.
Yes.
I see you. Okay. Would you ever build a campground?
We might, and the I at this time, no, it's not in the cards. We really like coming into an existing campground. We really like our turnaround projects. We feel like passionate about like we look at it as like saving campgrounds. Like if we were not to be the ones to come into a campground that needs a lot of work, like what would happen to it? Maybe it has like 10 years left on it, and then it's just like this rotting infrastructure. So we like love coming in and transforming an existing campground. As of this time, we have no
So never
plans.
say never, you're
Never say
saying.
never. We would
Never say
never say
never.
never to anything. No.
All right, all right. Dynamic pricing or no?
Yes, and but not in like as simplistic a way as like, all right, we're going to raise 10% when occupancy hits this. Like it is nuanced. We believe in making it work at the sense level, because that really makes an impact for us, and we are able to take whatever is optimized and like put it back into the campground. So we are fans of it if you do it right.
Okay. Promotional pricing or no?
Oh, yes. Every
Okay.
day, all day. Oh,
So,
yeah. We love promos.
Allie, have you been in the campground industry to know long enough to know that sales are controversial? They never used to exist.
I think that I get inklings of that for sure from the long-term campground owners, but we love a promo.
All right. What review can you not shake off?
That is such a great question. You mean like in a negative way?
Yeah. Or, yeah, in a negative way.
I think that there's one where, because I'm not usually called out by name because I have, limited times
Right.
working the campgrounds myself, but I have for sure, especially the first year and a half where we were just really getting up and running. And I would have to go be like one of two employees on a holiday weekend. And there was one review where I was the, one of two employees Memorial Day weekend, and we had found ourselves in a position where we the person that we thought was going to open the pool didn't open the pool, and so we were trying to open the pool, and it was just awful. because you can't not have a pool on Memorial
Yeah.
Day weekend. But we worked, me and this other team member, like tirelessly to try and get the pool open. We finally get it open like by the last day of the weekend, and we knew that it wasn't satisfying. But there was a review that like called me out by name, saying that like she promised that we would have a pool by Memorial Day weekend and the
Yeah.
last days. So it's the ones where you're working so
Yeah.
hard and you're still
Right.
called out.
I tried. I
We tried so
tried.
hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All
Yeah.
right. What have you not been able to hand off to an employee of Spacious Skies Campground? Like what one task or what you are just holding on to it?
I am holding on to recording our headquarters phone number phone menu. Right now, it is a robot's voice. We had one of our like beautiful voiced team members do the phone menus for our campgrounds, but I'm like, no, I'm going to do the headquarter
You're
one.
gonna do it.
And I
And you haven't
a
yet.
year later, so if you call the main number, it's still a robot.
All right, everybody, call that number because we got to hear this robot that Allie insists is better than anyone else but
It's
her.
just, oh gosh. Yeah.
All
It's
right.
all
And
great.
the last one, what is the thing that people get most wrong about what it means to be a campground owner?
I think that in like our circle of campground owners, I don't know, for us, that it's like all about the money and like corporate
Oh,
greed. Um, because it couldn't be further from the truth. Like this, I think, we were touching on it earlier. Like this is not the like investment to make easy money off of. So like everything that we do is so much more intentional than that, and is not like for a quick money grab. It's because we're trying to do things like intelligently to keep not just like the lights on, but keep making the experiences better and better every year. So like when you, and this is across the board, not just for like multi-park owners, but like when you have to raise the rate, from one year to the next, or when you're whatever it is, or you have to offer something as like a new service, and it used to be free, but now it can't be for whatever reason. Like that's not for selfish money grabs, and I know all my fellow campground owners can appreciate that. You got to do it. You got to keep the lights on.
yeah. Well, that was a great one to end on because I think you went right for that. Like, I mean, that was just, you went right in there. You dove right in. And I think that was, that's a really meaningful take on some of the things that, campground owners work so hard. They give so much effort
So
and
much.
they feel like a lot of that is invisible
Yeah.
labor and invisible care. And I mean, I know not a campground owner, most likely never will be, but just from being around so many campground owners over the last decade, that's the thing that stands out to me the most, which
Yeah.
is one of the reasons why I have this show now, because I just think it's
Yeah.
great to get the voice of the campground owner out there and talking to each other. So,
Yeah.
Allie, thank you so much for being on the show and helping me kick it off.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor to be an early guest.
Yes, and you will always have that stature on Campground Confidential by Park Vendor Review. Everybody, we'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Campground Confidential from Park Vendor Review. If you are a campground owner, operator, manager, or employee, make sure to sign up at parkvendorreview.com to search for vendors, read and write reviews, and access our library of resources. If you are a vendor in the outdoor hospitality space, head over to parkvendorreview.com and claim your listing today. We'll be back with another episode of Campground Confidential, but until then, visit us at parkvendorreview.com, where we make vendor decisions simple.